as she defines herself as a whole person. Professionally, she's currently a tenured professor of breast surgeon oncology at Texas Tech University Health Science Center, located in Lubbock, Texas. In addition, she is a mentor, a mom, a wife, and a trim tab. Speaking at conferences on personal development topics and leadership brings her great joy. Although her clinical and research interests pertain to breast cancer, her legacy will go well beyond breast disease. She has, like Tammy mentioned, she has written a book about integrity and leadership called Leadership Deconstructed, the Blueprint to Lead. I will tell you, when I first met this amazing individual, I said to myself, I want to collaborate with her, and I did. And that's why she's in Denver, Colorado. Human beings around the world, Dr. Rahman.
Thank you so much, Greg. You know, if my dad was here, he would be really proud. But if my mom was here, she would actually believe everything he said. So we're just going to talk about, the title of my book is Leadership Deconstructed, and it's a great segue. I mean, I think we couldn't have designed a better flow than Greg just did. We just heard a beautiful panel. And you will notice that I'll touch on some of the conceptual points that were made by these wonderful women we just heard from. I'll start with this metaphoric picture. I want people to imagine for a minute that this is maybe your organization, your sports team, your family, your group, or a 501c3 organization that you run. Something went horribly wrong because some crisis happened. Let this picture represent that. And think about, okay, this is a disaster, and we're going to have to fix it. What goes on when things like this happen in our organizations? Basically, what you're seeing is the structure, which is visible, and then there is a foundation which you can't see from what is obviously in front of your eyes. However, if you look at the reconstruction and remodeling of this house on the right panel, it looks beautiful. It's nicely redone. The front porch looks great, all the new sod and grass. So this is what's happening in many organizations. You change the team, you hire a new middle manager, new supervisors, some extra courses and certifications, and it's wonderful. How long do you think it's going to last when the next disaster hits? Because the foundation still has a crack. So when the next hurricane comes through, what do you think is going to happen to this building? It's not going to survive. And the kicker about the crisis is we get caught off guard. They don't give us a warning and a planning time to say that, oh, I'm such and such hurricane, I'm going to hit you next week. So those things catch us off guard. From an organizational perspective, I would say that when we fix the facade, those beams and pillars and the sod and the new front yard, we're working on those behaviors and techniques. Now, I don't mean to underestimate that those behaviors and techniques are irrelevant. We heard a lot about appreciating good work, giving compliments to people when they do a good job. Those are good behaviors, good technique. But imagine if your boss came to you every day, oh, awesome job, great work, and you could see right through him. What would that mean? As opposed to a genuine occasional visit, oh, I really appreciate that meeting. It was going south and I loved the way you salvaged that by this comment. So imagine the difference in authenticity that comes with it. So what is the foundation is the underlying character or integrity. And if we look at how this house is constructed, I did not know that Tammy was into construction, by the way. This was completely fluke shot. But you start with the blueprint, you start with the foundation, and you build on top of those things. So the idea that I'm trying to recapture, it's nothing new that I'm telling you. What I'm trying to capture is that foundation has to be first. And structure is second. All the soft skills, which are very important, and the competence skills that are very important. So I can be a very empathetic, high integrity type person, but if I'm a breast surgeon and I don't know how to hold a knife, we have a problem. So competence is secondary. It's a close second, but it's secondary to that foundation of character. And then facade is the last, those little trimmings that are important, that is that cutting thing that gives you that little edge that maybe your competitor doesn't have. So today's discussion is going to focus on this first part, that the foundation in our context of leadership, I believe, is integrity. And the structure part is the competence in whichever field that you're in, whether you're raising a family as a great mom, or you're coaching a soccer team, or leading a big bank or organization, or a 501c3. And the skills come last. So let's see, what is the hubbub? What's this leadership all about? If you actually looked at the definition of leadership, it's a process of social influence in which one person can enlist the aid and support of others in accomplishment of a common task. So the key piece is the social influence. I get you to do something that's important to me. How do we get that social influence going? The way we get that going, if you look at the leadership literature, I wanted to kind of talk about that for a second just to avoid some of the confusion. I'm a simple-minded person. I don't get too complicated into the concepts. We have seen definitions like ethical leadership, transformational leadership, good leadership, or authentic leadership. For my purpose, leadership has to be ethical, it has to be transformational, it has to be good, and it has to be authentic. I mean, what is unethical leadership? It's called dictatorship. What is transactional leadership? That's management, and it has its role. But leadership is always transformational. So let's go back to what we're talking about. We're talking about influencing other people to get them to do what you like to see happen. Now, it comes from two different places. You can use positional authority. I'm your boss, I tell you when to come, you swipe your card, I count your hours, that's how you get paid, you do X, you do Y, or else. Well, there'll be some success, people need their job, they need to put food on table, they'll get that job done. They won't love you for exercising positional authority all the time. There are rules and policies that use that, and there is a role for that. And the other way people get influenced is moral authority. All of us know, we've worked in different organizations, even within family structures, there is always that one aunt or one uncle or somebody that everybody goes to because you just so value their opinion. You know they deeply care about you. That influence comes from moral authority. So my argument to you is that your influence, which is the original goal of socially influencing people, over a period of time goes down if the vehicle you use for that influence is a positional authority. But if you use that vehicle as a moral authority, then your influence goes up and work becomes really easy because it's autopilot. And oftentimes organizations will pick people with moral authority to put them in positional authority for that reason. So let's talk about how do you build that moral authority. That comes from the foundation we talked about. That foundation is integrity. Now, integrity in many ways is a loaded word in some form. I would say though that recently, within last couple months, I've had two different discussions about integrity which are making me a little bit nervous, so I want to let it out there. One of the executive coach discussion that I was having in our little group, someone says, oh, what are your true values? And another person answered, well, integrity. And literally before he could finish a sentence, oh, don't give me that flowery language, integrity. Nobody has integrity. Nobody can be perfect. So tell me what you really value. So as if we debunked the value of integrity because since nobody's going to have it, therefore why bother? I take an issue with that approach. The second is a little bit kinder version that since you can't have, there's always some time, some place where you had an integrity breach or you made a decision which was not quite perfect. You just finished a bag of chips, it flew out of your car in the middle of the highway, you didn't really stop to pick it back up. And so yes, there are moments of those integrity breaches. And so So if we are going to say that our value or non-negotiable value is going to be integrity, then we can't really have integrity, because that's too tall an order for us to fulfill the role. I would say that no, like we heard from the panel, you're allowed to make mistakes. I would go with Stephen Carter's definition. Integrity doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect. Integrity means that I'm going to be humble and acknowledge that I'm wrong, and will have courage to apologize and let my vulnerability show that I was wrong and I missed a step. The funny part about that is we feel, oh my God, I feel naked. What if everybody will find out I did this? I will tell you that it is amazing how when you feel naked, how people are so forgiving and actually clothe you. And that is integrity. So let's ponder a little bit on the definition. If you go by the dictionary definition, the root of the word integratum comes from wholeness, which basically talks about your mindset and your behavior. So the mindset is the sense of security comes from self, my ability to discern what the right thing is, and ability to do it and take ownership of it. And steadfast adherence to those values. And once that is my mindset, which you can't see, this is in my head, but what you can see is how I behave. And people will judge us with whether the walk matches the talk consistently, or our outside matches the inside, or I'm just telling you for a checkbox, good job, good job, good job. And I know that I don't even know the job you do. So those are the things that people will look for. Now, having said that, if we look at that definition, you can probably see that that is very incomplete in many people's mind of integrity. Let's take for example, of Amon Guth, who was a Nazi soldier outside of Poland. He was deeply married to his value that I shall kill every Jew I see. He believed in it, he wanted to do it, he said it aloud, and he literally sat outside his bedroom balcony with a gun and shot every Jew that passed through the labor camp. So he lived his values. Which one of us will think that's integrity? On the other hand, let's think of somebody like Anwar Sadat, who won an entire election through the support of Muslim Brotherhood, and I'll never shake a hand with the Jew. But he went to Jerusalem, met with people, got the first Peace Prize, got back on his word. His wife in his interview had said that you know they're going to kill you. He said, I know. You know they put you in the office to be anti-Jewish leader for the Muslims. He said, I know. You know you're going to be shot. He said, I know. So he went back on his word as he thought through and reflected on his positions. Are we going to say that he was not a person of integrity? So that definition is a little left on what you desire. That's where we have to importantly realize that we develop our paradigms and reflect our behaviors based on paradigm. If we work only on the behavior part of it, that's the structure. If we don't change the paradigm, which is the foundation. So the other definition of integrity is more encompassing of moral uprightness, meaning your commitment to moral values in a moral society. Generally speaking, the way I would explain that is that when you develop a system of values, other people, your coexistent people in your neighborhood, in your work environment, in your team, they have a reasonable expectation to deliver on a certain value, and when you don't, they have a right to be upset. But some values may be your personal values, but that may not be a part of moral uprightness. For example, I want to be the best breast surgeon in the world with the beautiful outcome of every operation that I did. That's my personal value, right? If I'm not awesome at a certain technique, my neighbor doesn't have an automatic expectation and a right to be upset because I didn't become a certain level achieved in my career. However, When I have a barbecue in my front yard and I trash his yard and don't clean it, he has a reasonable expectation that that was not okay and has the right to be upset. That's where I think our conscience piece comes in. So the way I tie the wholeness piece with the moral uprightness is the use of conscience. So you're whole if your conscience is dictating that what you're doing is the right thing to do. And when those values are morally upright value, you will realize that you probably will not use the word integrity for Aman Guth, but you might use it for Anwar Sadat. So values in that way, when we decide and discern for ourselves, all values that are very important to us and non-negotiable are personal to us. However, they can be moral values, like the example I just talked about. There could be non-moral values. If I want to be the best pianist in the world, that's my personal passion and value. But it's non-moral. Other people don't have an expectation. And then, of course, there are immoral values. If you really espouse something which is evil by design, hopefully that's a really, really minority position that we see. So the goal should be then, how do we develop a set of personal values in order to develop that moral authority to socially influence people? Introspection is important to get rid of the immoral values and make the moral values a bigger portfolio of ourselves. We can choose that. And non-moral values may be all right, but the focus of the moral influence would come from your moral values. Honesty, fairness. And the interesting part is these values, there are principles that stand alone, irrespective of color, caste, creed, culture, which part of the world you are in. There is not a culture where honesty is a bad idea. Now, altruism, I would say, is a little over the top, above and beyond. Altruism is not the value that I would say my neighbor has an automatic right to expect of me. But if I do show that, that gives you that much of an edge. However, honesty and fairness, being principled and just, those things are expected in a moral society. Now, non-moral values, I have nothing against them. Fame and status and skill and wealth and social class, those are okay. But other human beings don't have an automatic right to expect you to deliver on them. So that's how I would think about it. So if I summarize this story, that's where I think the integrity sits. Not that I'm going to be this perfect person. Not that I won't make a mistake, but I'll have humility to acknowledge the mistake and take ownership and consequence of it and be transparent about it. So integrity, in turn, in any organization affects the leadership domains and the ethical domains of that organization. What are the policies? What are the procedures? What are the idealized influence pieces? So you would notice that, I mean, we work in organizations that are policies and codes of conduct, procedure about, dress codes and timesheets and card swipes and all kinds of things. Where do you park? Where does who park? Close up, long, depending on your status. We park very far away. Generally, physicians park very far because all the close parking spots are for patients. So those rules are developed for some reasons, but those are all impacted by what the true values of the organization is. And that's what dictates the culture. And eventual outcome domains will then be whether it's the goal that you wanted to achieve as a nonprofit, or winning a gold medal as a team, or market share growth, or troubleshoot expertise, whatever it is. I think the important point is that those values is where we have a conscious choice. That's the difference as human beings we have that animals don't, that we can choose our values. How we behave or what culture depends in our family or in our organizations is a consequence of those values. Like it's been said, every organization is perfectly aligned with the results it gets. All cultures are perfectly aligned. So if you're not liking the results you're getting, examine those values, because the culture is invariably going to align with those values. And what you get at the end is the result. So if the end result is looking like the first broken house that I showed, then you will realize that to deconstruct that, you'll have to go back to the values. It was very interesting. One of the things that our system did is this whole push of value-based culture. And I thought it was such an interesting phrase. I think all cultures are value-based cultures. The question is what those values are. Culture will invariably be value-based. You can't change it. You've already picked the value. You may not have consciously picked it, but it's there. So how do you develop that? Because if we have the value, which is kind of less than perfect, not really cool, we don't want, I mean, I don't want to stand here in front of you and say that, oh, I'm the person who, you know, occasionally I'll play hooky and get away from work because I was just feeling lazy. Even if we do that, who wants to come and acknowledge that that's what we do? Or even better, I gave this employment to so-and-so as opposed to so-and-so because I know their dad or I know their mom. Happens all day long. And those are all integrity breaches. So I invite you to, this is the hard part, deeply introspect. When something is not right, the question is not, typical meetings would be, okay, what happened? So-and-so did this message didn't go to that one, the process didn't work right, what fell through the cracks and how can we fix the process? Rarely do we sit as leaders in a room and say, how did I contribute to this situation? What could I have done differently? And that's very hard. I'm going to tell you, a couple decades ago, I was in a situation where we're doing some research, trying to publish a paper, we're analyzing the results, the draft version comes through, and there is a complication rate reported on it. By my calculation, the complication rate was much higher. The boss edits it and makes it much lower. I first think it's a typo. So I sent an email back, no, it's actually this. I attached the spreadsheet. Oh, don't correct my edits. Oh, okay. So then I realized that, oh, that's by design. So I very quietly, now I'm a very junior person. This person has a lot of influence on what my career path is going to be. And so I just withdraw my name for the paper because I wasn't okay with what was being reported. Well, long story short, somebody down the review process had decided or whatever, and the boss's boss calls me in the office and asked me to explain what happened. And I was like, sir, this happened, that happened, that happened. Well, can you prove what you're telling me? Well, I have the emails. I can show you. Well, what happened next is not the point. The point is, when I tell this story, of course it's poor little victim me. I did the right thing. I was honest. And somebody was out to get me, right? And I can always have a team of people around me who say, okay, what a bad thing happened to me. And it did. However, when I look back and deeply introspect, I can come up with all those explanations. X did a bad choice. So-and-so was unethical. But if I ask the question, how did I contribute to what ended up happening to me? It is true, two wrongs don't make a right. The bottom line is I did blindside this person. I was scared. Instead of going to this person and say, I was called to the office and this was asked of me, I want you to be aware. I was so scared that I did what I was told to do, but I didn't inform this person transparently. What I know now. However, it doesn't take away from what they did. But if I don't talk myself into what could I have done better, two wrongs don't make a right. Just because somebody else did something wrong, that doesn't mean what you did wrong is okay. And you have to take a position of non-judgment because you'll discover things about yourself that you're not very proud of. However, that's the most liberating feeling you'll ever get. And people provide you that clothing when you feel naked having done that. And so I really, really invite you to look at all those situations as, oh, okay, everybody else is very bad. What is my role in it, and what could I have done differently? And that's a constant renewal process. It's not a one-time and done thing. So that's the piece. And this is just to kind of summate that the structure piece is confidence. I'm not going to go into the competence piece of it, that of course, whichever area you're working in, there are certifications or courses or whatever competence level you need to achieve in your field of interest. Of course, that's a close second in being a leader, which is obviously has three components. The knowledge piece you have, the proficiency, and we heard about from the panel that people want to, I have all the right certificates, I did the course and I passed and I got an A, and now I need to be the boss. And so the experience, so proficiency is training and simulation, but experience is the work longevity and management, those experience. We say there is no shortcut to experience. And it is important, like one of my ex-bosses used to say that good judgment comes from experience and experience comes from bad judgment. And there is no shortcut around it. So that competence is a close second. And then the soft skills part is the last part, which basically, there are several skills, and this list can be modified based on which organizational endeavor we're talking about. But conflict management, communications, and emotional intelligence, there's a lot of work out there on those areas, and we can help with building those teams, building a vision and a mission, and building a team, which, as Dr. Jindal alluded to, the diversity and inclusion part of it, the diversity of thought processes, how you incorporate those in strength of the team. Because the key piece of that is all of us will have weaknesses because we're fallible humans. However, the team can be perfect, because when we leverage each other's strengths, we make each other's weaknesses irrelevant. And that's the important point. And of course, accountability is a whole another thing that maybe Greg would do at another time.